The Spiel Canal, yet another gaming channel with no budget for animation or even a catchy tune.
So begins The House of Artifice, the Necromunda book dedicated to the clan of Van Saar. If you desire running a Van Saar gang, I would say The House of Artifice is your most important book purchase. But before you do that, let's explore the video, perhaps tickle my like and subscribe buttons, and then purchase the volume House of Artifice at your local independent hobby retailer. So like any good, non-pretentious story, let's start at the beginning. Action. Our tale begins in approximately M25, the 25th millennium, during an age of exploration, a golden age for humanity. A ship, the Van Saar, sets off into the warp. Destination, the fledgling planet, Arrhenius Prime. But something goes awry, and the ship, and all of its crew, which is in stasis, conveniently, it's lost in the warp for 10,000 years. Now in M35, the Van Saar reappears above Arrhenius Prime, but that planet is now known as the Hive World Necromunda. The Van Saar crashes into the planet's surface. Now centuries later, there is a trade hub called Junkertown, which forms around the ship's carcass. Now whether the people that started Junkertown were descendants of the original crew or the tech gangers that found the wreckage, the group known as Van Saar is gaining recognition. They seem to have an abundance in archaeotech. The hierarchy of the Van Saar is developing, and its empire and its wealth, they're growing. The Van Saars use the wealth and the recognition and begin to integrate themselves within the Hive. They start setting up new bases, picking up new holdings all across the planet, especially in Hive Primus. And when the other gangs come for Junkertown, looking for the archaeotech treasures, about 3,000 years after the Van Saar crashed on Necromunda, it's too late. The Van Saars, they have the resources and they've moved their prize assets away from Junkertown. The clan house of Van Saar is established. Oh, bollocks. Fuck it. Do it live. I'm doing it live. Okay, sorry for the disruption. So what's allowed the Van Saars to accrue so much so quickly? I mean, say quickly, 3,000 years is the coming and going of empires. Well, aboard the ecology ship, Van Saar was one of the mythical standard construct templates. In 40k, the STC is a bit of a catch-all term, really. It can mean a blueprint, it can be part of a database, it can be a complete manufacturing capability. An STC is the complete archive of human technological capability before the Age of Strife, when everything fell apart for humanity. However, during that Age of Strife, these archaeo treasures, they just wasted away. They were just neglected. Planets were lost, colonies were destroyed, lots of slavery, so much forgotten, never to be relearned. And an STC is supposed to be the sum of that knowledge. No complete STC has ever been found. So the rumour is the Van Saar had a complete STC on its ship, a whole database. However, the one in use by the clan house today is damaged, no doubt from the crash, and elements of it have been lost, though there's still plenty remaining, which provides a massive range of blueprints and is the source of the archaeotech that's provided them their wealth and reputation for being at the forefront of technology. Additionally, the Van Saars can feed new blueprints and designs into this device to improve them. But as is always the way, this technological wonder has a massive cost. For one, they have to keep it secret, not only because of their rivals on Necromunda, but also the Imperium or the Adeptus Mechanicus would just crush Van Saar to get that. There'd be no negotiations, they would just seize it. That would be taking away Van Saar's big advantage on Necromunda. So number one, Van Saars have to keep it secret. Number two, the STC poisons the clan. From its damage from the crash, the device leaks radiation, and the unique equipment it produces also emits this radiation. So the Van Saars can produce standard Imperium technology which doesn't emit radiation, and such is their expertise with technology that the equipment they produce is of a higher level than what other groups can produce. The unique and improved devices that they have to keep within the gang. They can't distribute it outside the gang, otherwise the poison would be apparent to others and it would confirm the rumours about the STC. That would require further investigation. Also, Also, the Vansars like to keep the best for themselves. And due to this poison, the Vansars are frail and they're sickly, always requiring chems from House Escher, conveniently, for a profit, as well as specialist bodysuits, which help them not die prematurely, from illness at least, thug life. Let's get on to the specifics of the gangs. Unit names. A gang leader for the Vansars is called a Prime. They have 2 different types of champions. They have Augmex and Archaeotechs. They have Techs, which is their usual ganger. They have Subtechs, which is their Jews, and their Prospects are Neotechs. We'll come back to the equipment that these guys receive in the gear section of the video. So let's look at the stats. The Vansars have the best ballistic skill in game. The Prime and the Champions, they hit on a 2+, the Techs hit on a 3+, and the Prospects and the Jews are 4. So aiming and getting within short range is useful for dealing with cover bonuses to reduce those bonuses, but if you can catch anybody out in the open, then you should cut them down. Now, while their ballistics are great, being the sickly little feeble clan that they are, they only manage a 4-inch movement, and on top of that, they have the worst initiative in the game. I mean, it's really terrible. It's horrific. 5+. This is going to impact when they try and disengage from melee. It's when they try not to fall off of ledges if they get pinned near a ledge. Trying not to get crushed by doors. Anything that relies on some kind of agility or dexterity. The gang is like an army of Grandpa Simpsons. Credit cost. The Primes average for leaders. The champs are a little bit on the top end credit cost. The gangers are quite expensive. Only the Paladinite Enforcers are more expensive. Even their Prospects are the most expensive, but the Jews are reasonably priced. Only 35 credits, but they can have las guns, not just pistols. Helpful. Within that credit cost, all gang members come with
armoured body gloves,
6+ armour, and I think they have a nice selection of weapons. Skills wise, Primes, they have access to shooting skills, and who cares what else? They're a shooty gang. They've got access to shooting skills, which is good. That's what you want. At some point in the future, I'll bring out a top skills video. But at this point, just take my word for it. Shooty gang, shooty skills, brilliant. Augmex and the Primes have access to the shooty skill tree. Archaeotechs don't. They have Savant and Tech. What you take there is going to really depend on if it's a skirmish game or a campaign. Savant can provide some nice bonuses in campaign play. When it comes to the shooting skills, I'd say Fast Shot's pretty good. So shooting becomes a simple action, so you can do it twice in your turn. Gunfighter, if you've got double pistol, double plasma pistol, pew pew, it lets you shoot both guns at full ballistic skill, which is good because usually if you dual wielding, you have trailblazing and you get -1 on your ballistic skill. Also, it lets you target separate targets with your pistols. Trick shot's also good, reduces the cover modifier for your targets. You're already hitting with your champions and primes on a 2+. So if they have trick shot, then even those targets behind cover, they're going to get less out of that, which is good. Also, if somebody in melee manages to catch one of your fighters, which we'll come to how bad that is soon, then trick shot allows you to shoot the person that's engaged with your fighter and not suffer a minus to hit on the ballistic skill. So these would be my go-to with the shooty skills without going into too much depth. I do like Gunfighter. My Gene Stealer Alpha has Gunfighter. He has triple arms, so he can shoot at 3 targets at the same time, which is pretty good. Okay, let's look at the gear. On the weapon side, we've got Plasma, we've got Melters, we've got Lazes. It's a pretty energy weapon heavy list. Melters are crazy. They're insane. At short range, on an unsafe wound, you just bypass the injury die altogether. Just kapow, gone. It's like Thanos just clicks his fingers. Plasmas are also a lot of fun.
Phased plasma rifle in a 40-watt range.
Hey, just what you see, pal.
They have 2 different power settings. They have low power, high power. Obviously high power, much more powerful, it was given away in the title. But low power, the weapon isn't unstable, which is in high power. Also, a plasma gun is, in low power, it has rapid fire. It's -1 on AP for its target, so they get -1 on their save roll, and it does 2 wounds. So if you're shooting somebody with a 6+ save, and you hit them, and you wound them, they don't get a save roll, and they'll take 2 wounds, which would be 2 injury die on a normal ganger. If you got that rapid fire, then got potentially 6 wounds you could do to somebody. The highest setting, obviously, it is better, but that unstable trait gives the gun a chance to blow up in your hands, and you don't really want that because one of the things about Vansars is they're quite expensive, the unit, so you're not going to be fielding as many. Do you really want to risk losing somebody? The time I would be using high power is if I was going against like an Ambot or a leader, so an Orlok leader or someone. Orlok leaders have 3 wounds, so that could be worth going high power against one of those. So that covers the weapons, or everything I'm going to talk about the weapons anyway. Other gear, Your Van Dams, they have a native 6+ because of that protective armoured body glove that I mentioned earlier, and it stacks with other armour. So if you upgrade your fighter with mesh armour, which is 15 credits, usually mesh armour gives you a 5+ save. For Van Sars, because you've got your Pimpin body glove, it's 4+ save. 50% save. 50% chance of saving on weapons that don't reduce AP. Player.
Want the goodies?
Welcome to the goodie room.
Van Sars also have energy shields, which are very similar to the Palanite shields. They give you 2+ on your armour in melee, facing the target, as well as +1 on your save for range attacks. If you are in melee and you've got a shield, you can use it just to smack that opponent, and it has knockback, so it can push it back an inch. If you hit them with your shield and get that knockback, then you have a chance to disengage from the combat without needing to take an initiative roll. Yeah, you have to pass an initiative check, so yeah, that's ideal, I suppose. The other piece of gear that Van Sars have, their prospects have the grav cutters, which I'm sure you've seen, little hoverboards. They allow the prospects to move 7 inches. They allow them to ignore terrain. They can't fall. They can move between levels on a multi-tiered terrain. They can fly over the enemy, but they can't end their movement within 1 inch of the enemy, as per normally the rules, unless they've charged somebody. They ignore pinning by choice. If they take a serious injury, that will put them down, but they can't take cover and they can't voluntarily go prone. And because they're bobbing about on their little hoverboards, they also have reduced cover. So full cover would normally make them -2 to hit, but only be -1 because their little heads are just bobbing about. But they can take shields as well. Although I'm not sure if you would take the shields given the points cost. A shield is 50 credits. Do you want to be putting it on somebody that's going to be whizzing about like a loon? Finally, Archaeotechs. Your champion, the Archaeotech, has access to the iconic Spider Rig. So this gives them some interesting abilities, and this is your real options for melee in Van Sars. So the Spider Rig has a versatile trait, which means it can attack in melee, but from within 3 inches. So if you're outside of 1 inch and you do a melee attack against somebody, they can't get a reaction attack against you unless you're within 1 inch. So you deny that reaction attack, it buffs your weapon skill, it increases your number of attacks, it increases your strength. So if you charged with a Spider Rig, you get a 4-inch move, you get D3 additional movement as part of the charge. If you're not sure what I'm on about, you should watch my earlier videos. And instead of having to get within 1 inch of your target, you only have to get within 3 inches. So you're going to get at least an 8-inch charge with your Archaeotech, potentially 10 inches. And if you're on that charge, you get 6 attacks. 6 attacks with strength 4 hitting on 3s. That can be devastating, really. If you stayed outside of that 1 inch, so they're not even getting a reaction attack either. So you go in, kapow, 6 attacks, bugger off. That's what I would do. Other traits on the Spider Rig, you've got Parry, which allows you to force a reroll on a 2-hit from an opponent who is attacking you in melee. You've got Entangle, you've got Shock. Those provide some extra goodies on rolling 6s. Read your trait book. Jeez. The Archaeotech is the only ganger who can take that Spider Rig. Additionally, it gives you a free Cyber Technica. It doesn't roll off the tongue. Who is naming these things? I don't get it. And as I said, they can take the Savant or Tech Skill. Okay, let's talk about Tech Skills. House of Artifice introduces the Tech Skills for Van Sars. It's the only house that can take it. Really? These are just terrible. These are such terrible skills. Weaponsmith is good, I guess. Weaponsmith improves the chances of you getting reloads, depending on ammo scarcity. The others are just such a waste. Which actually, this reminds me, I haven't said this previously. If you're playing campaign mode, so you accrue XP from your battles and kills with your gangers, don't waste that XP on rolling random skills. Save up the extra XP and go for specific skills. Random skills are just so bad. There's so many bad skills. Just pick the good ones. It's a waste of your experience. Each house book introduces something unique to the house. So let's look at the unique mechanic that Van Sars get, other than the skill tree, obviously. The Cyber Technica. So those are little cyborg upgrades for your gangers. So if you're rolling with that Archaeotech, they get 1 for free at the beginning. The Primes and the Augmechs, they can pay to have a Cyber Technica at the beginning. Gangers, Jews, prospects. In a skirmish, sure, go for it. Why not? Doesn't matter, you do whatever you want in a skirmish. In a campaign, they can't start with those implants. So what do? What are they for? Well, so in a campaign, fighters can suffer lasting injuries. So, if they get shot in the head, lose an arm, half leg, whatever. And if you do that, then obviously your new guy, so Josh gets shot in the leg. Not only is Josh now called Stumpy, he also loses stats. Now he can fix that by buying Bionics at a trade hub, which is something you can visit in between campaign games. So the Bionics can only ever restore the stats. They don't improve them past where they should be. But the Cyber Technicas also restore the stats, but they also give your fighters additional bonuses. So Van Sars don't need no cheap sweatshop Bionics. They have Cyber Technica. It's horrible. So one of the things it allows you to do is if you're going to receive a lasting injury in the post-battle sequence, there's a chance that it hits the implant, and on a good roll there's no damage, you're fine, you've dodged that lasting injury. Or on a bad roll you lose that enhancement that you paid for, but you don't lose the stats, you only lose the enhancement. They go back to their base stats, so you can upgrade that again as well if you have enough credits. So it's like an extra life. Additionally, each location for a Cyber Technica has 3 levels of implant that can be there, and it's not linear. You can pick whichever one you want. They do go up in price. You have alpha level, gamma level, omega level, so each one gives you what the previous one gives and something else. So let's look at Torsonic, for example. The alpha gives your unarmed melee attacks 3 damage instead of 1, so not bad, although don't get in melee, that's ridiculous. The gamma does that, and it also gives you +2 strength when using melee or versatile weapons. So the alpha buffs your unarmed melee, and the gamma buffs your weapon strength. Not too sure about that. The omega does what the 2 previous did, as well as giving you inbuilt suspensors. Suspensors reduce a firing weapon which has an unwieldy trait from a double action to fire it to a single action, so then you can go back to just moving and shooting, like a heavy stubber. Heavy stubber takes both your actions to fire. If you have suspensors, then it only takes a single action. So the Cyber Technicas, some of them are really useful. It doesn't necessarily pay to progress the level of the Cyber Technica that you've picked up if you've started with the alpha. It depends on what you're trying to do with that character. Other unique things for House Van Sar, they have a exotic beast, which is a pet spider. It's alright, it's cheap, looks cute, but the brute, the Arachnorig, is a beast. It has strength 5, 4 attacks, 3 wounds. It has a twin-linked heavy las carbine, which sounds really cool. Twin-linked in Necromunda lets you re-roll the ammo dice, which also it's rapid fire 3. That's a lot of shots, potentially 9 shots you could get from that weapon. The Arachnorig has a 4+ save, which you can also upgrade to a 3+ on the front, so you can make it even stronger for when it's facing enemy. And on top of that, it has the skill I mentioned previously, Fast Shot. As part of its profile, you don't need to take that as a separate skill. So if you don't move your Arachnorig, it can fire those twin-linked heavy las carbines twice. That's ridiculous. Now its ballistic skill means it hits on a 4+, so ganger level. So maybe you don't want to go with the twin-linked heavy las carbine reliance. How about just charge in? It has 5-inch movement, so ka-ching. Obviously it has that strength 5. It has those 4 attacks, so 5 attacks on a charge. It's a bit more expensive than an Ambot, but I think it's worth it. I think it gives a lot of character. I don't believe a model's been released for it yet, so you could kit bash something quite interesting. I've seen some nice mixes with Tau components, but what I really want to see is somebody to create one that looks like a power loader from Aliens with Ripley inside it. One of the things that we've not brushed upon in previous videos is guild alliances, and we're not going to go into too much detail now. It's quite a large topic, and it's a campaign mechanic, not needed for skirmish games. But Necromunda has lots of guilds, and gangs have special fun time relationships with a load of them, and they'll have preferential guilds. So during a campaign, you can form an alliance with a guild if you meet certain requirements, and if you're chummy with them, it brings certain benefits, but it also has drawbacks. So the Van Sars, they're bestest buds forever with the Prometheum Guild, the Imperial Imposters, and House Catalyst, which looks like a load of circus performers. If I just go into the Prometheum Guild as the example here, if they're in your list as a preferred guild, you can form a strong alliance. Then one of the benefits is plasma and flame weapons lose the scarcity trait, so easy to reload. Also, you have a chance that you can bring a 4-man crew called the Pyromantic Conclave on your missions if you want to. These don't cost any points to bring them, but obviously, as I said, it's not all roses. There's some drawbacks. Usually it's things like there's limitations on what sort of missions you can take, certain missions you have to take. Also with the Prometheum Guild, they take a fat wad of your mission reward credits. Potentially they'll take all the credits. And if you can't pay them all, then you have to test your alliance. So if you break these conditions, there's a chance you end up breaking the alliance, so you lose the benefits. The benefits of having a strong alliance is you can breach the conditions once and you don't have to test it, but subsequent breaches you will. So that ability to be able to breach an alliance is handy if you want to keep all your nice shiny gold. Okay, we should be wrapping this up really, it's getting quite long. So the coup de grace of this video, the strengths and flaws. Strength wise, the Vansars, they've got some good gear. They obviously have amazing ballistic skill with access to the shooting skill tree. The stackable extra armor is great, really a cheap way to get some really good armor on your guys, especially as the campaign progresses and you can put better and better armor on more people. Online, I've seen a lot of eye rolling about the Cyber Technica. I think it's a nice touch for cheap boosts. Certainly gives some flavour to the gang. I think that the Vansars are recognised as being a strong gang, and some would consider them easy mode, but don't get complacent because they certainly have weaknesses. So their weaknesses, with all that radiation sickness, they're very fragile. It's like going to war with a gang made of retirement home patrons. If they get caught on a charge, they can get crushed. If you are playing as Vansar, you do have melee options, but your guys are so expensive that going against a dedicated melee gang, you're just going to be outnumbered and it won't be a viable tactic. Against most gangs, you're going to have issues with numerical superiority on their part. More gangers, even if they're not as powerful as yours, is more activations before your next turn. Personally, and obviously I'll change this tactic if I'm ever playing any of you guys, I would look to dominate the long range with a core section of my gang in fire teams. I would have the grav cutters and the spider rig, push them into melee to try and tie the enemy up, cause some panic, and it will also stop them from trying to close the distance with my shooters who are sniping from the back with their, brilliant ballistic skill. Now, be careful with this tactic because the spider rig will struggle against tougher targets, and even those multi-wound targets like the Orlok leaders I mentioned previously, because it will struggle to do 3 wounds and pin that model and get the coup de grace even with 6 attacks. So if you can avoid engaging the high toughness models or the multi-wound leaders, it would be much more effective. So that's the end of this one.
Wow, that was a long one. Took me bloody ages. And I broke 150 subscribers, so damn. Thank you all who have graced me with such faith and patron. I've committed to one more song video, then I'll be covering a different game for a video or 2. The next house book would be Blades or Faith. If you have a preference, let me know. I love my community, I love the engagement. My next video will also feature a competition, but entry relies on some social media, so I just need to finish my MySpace page first. Like, share, subscribe. In the 4-armed Emperor we trust.